This week we're highlighting the Texas Prosperity Promise. It's our pledge to secure and extend Texas success through 2019 and beyond. It's more than a plan for the next legislative session. It's a commitment to the guiding values and principles that are crucial to Texas prosperity and freedom. It's a promise to you and a promise to each other to protect and defend Texas. We ask that you join this effort by visiting prosperitypromise.com, or you can sign the Prosperity Promise through an icon on your app. And related to the Prosperity Promise, I want to talk about my center, which is the newest policy center at Texas Public Policy Foundation, started in November of 2016. Really in response to some of the changes and some of the crises that we were experiencing in the Texas foster care system at the time. The mission of my center, which is the Center for Families and Children, is to increase self-governance within families and communities in order to support human flourishing within a civil society. We're committed to a Texas in which families are intact, where parents rise to the responsibilities to each other and to their children, where children are free from harm by their caregivers, and where families are connected with each other and with social institutions and communities of trust and support. And I really think today's presentation allows us to highlight here at TPPF a real victory of conservative principles in this realm of human services where it's not been dictated a lot by conservative values and conservative principles. We've been largely absent from the table in the past. And so in December of 2011, the state of Texas, the Department of Family and Protective Services, the governor, and the commissioner of CPS, which is our Child Protective Services, were sued by a New York ACLU offshoot called Children's Rights, and sued in federal court. They chose a federal court down in Corpus Christi with a Clinton appointee as a judge. And we worked our way through that system, and in December of 2015, which shows you how long it takes to get through the court system, the judge issued an initial order where she found the Texas foster care system to be unconstitutionally broken. The judge did. She said that children in the foster care system are exposed to unreasonable risk of harm, and that rape, abuse, psychotropic medications, and instability are the norm for Texas foster kids. So obviously there was a crisis at this point. Adding to this crisis is the problem of foster care capacity. There's not enough foster homes, believe it or not. Even though the good-hearted people of Texas always step up, and we saw in Hurricane Harvey, we don't have enough foster homes for the children that the state currently has in its care, and we end up putting a lot of those children in congregate care and group homes. And so because of that, there were children sleeping in agency offices, and that was making the news. And so really, as we rolled up to the end of 2016, we'd had an adverse federal ruling, we had some bad press, and Texas Public Policy Foundation had the forethought to get involved in this fight. Like I said, there was no one on our end of the table, and there hadn't been. And so we started this center. I was recruited and really just said a lot of the things I've been saying for the last several years. The difference was that with the effectiveness and with the credibility of Texas Public Policy Foundation, I was able to find a path into policymakers like Representative Frank. So first of all, before we start talking about how Texas responded to this foster care crisis, the reforms for foster care that were put into place, I'd like to introduce the panelists. To my immediate left is Representative James Frank. He is currently in his third term in the Texas House of Representatives. He serves as the vice chair of the Human Services Committee, is on natural resources and local and consent calendars. His focus is on seeing government provide core services more efficiently. It led to the sponsorship of House Bill 5 and House Bill 6, which you'll hear more about today, to reform child protective services, and its parent agent, the Department of Family and Protective Services. He served as the president of the Straight Street and of the Home Educators around Texoma, the vice chairman of the Wichita Falls Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and served on the advisory board of the Leilani. Is that right?
Leilani, it's all right.
Leilani?
Leilani.
Don't put any difficult to pronounce words.
That was an old bio.
the Lalani Center for Entrepreneurship and Free Enterprise at Midwestern State University. Next to him is Katie Olse. She's appointed the Executive Director of the Texas Alliance of Child and Family Services in December of 2016. Before that, she was the Deputy Commissioner of the Department of Family and Protective Services and Chief of Staff of the Texas Health and Human Services Commission. She served as a Senior Policy Advisor to the Executive Commissioner for the Department of Family and Protective Services. You're going to get a lot of acronyms, so I'm just going to start you out now. I probably should have put like a cheat sheet on your table. So I'm going to go to DFPS. That's the parent agency, Department of Family and Protective Services. CPS is the Child Protective Services sub-agency of that. So please feel free to raise your hand because we get into acronym speak up here. She was also the director of the Center for Consumer and External Affairs at DFPS, where she worked closely with the commissioner and the legislature on critical issues within the child protection, regulatory, adult protection, and prevention and early intervention system. Next to Katie is Kristene Blackstone. She is the Associate Commissioner for Child Protective Services. She's been in that position since May 1st of 2016. She oversees one of the largest CPS programs in the nation, and she previously served as Deputy Director for Field Operations at the Texas Office of the Attorney General's Child Support Division, where she oversaw daily operations of the Field Operations Division, which has 2,300 employees across the state. She has over 25 years of public service experience, and she's held positions as CPS Supervisor, Program Director, and Regional Program Administrator. On the end, last but certainly not least, is Matt Waller. He is a founder of the Addict Foster Care Network. He's from Midland, Texas. Matt and his wife Jen have been foster parents since 2009. Both have spent most of their married life in Christian camping, and they moved to Midland in 2015. The Addict Foundation now allows foster parents of the Permian Basin to share resources while empowering churches and the community to engage in the local orphan crisis. Jen manages the Addict's inventory and distributes resources and coordinates volunteers while Matt connects with agencies, churches, and businesses. We really wanted Jen, but
5 kids.
She has 5 kids, so we ended up with Matt, and we're going to make do. All right. So there's a lot of knowledge that we need to impart to you because this is not an area that Texas Public Policy Foundation has presented a lot in past events. Probably not a lot of you that are familiar with our organization are familiar with our work in Texas foster care. And like I said, it's relatively new. So we're going to have to bring us up to speed a little bit. I mentioned to you this federal court case filed by the ACU organization Children's Rights. And we had an initial opinion that came out in December 2015. And so I'm going to ask Kristene, who is our Associate Commissioner of CPS, to sort of bring us up to date on the current status of the litigation, where we are in the litigation, and sort of what the agency is doing in response, if anything, to this federal judge oversight.
Good afternoon. Well, so recently the court has entered a final order, and it in large part orders an implementation plan. There have been special masters assigned to the lawsuit for the last couple of years, and they've spent that time developing a plan for the judge to consider to reform CPS in Texas. The court, in large part, adopted their plan and issued an order. We immediately filed a motion to stay that order, and the appellate court did grant an administrative stay. Subsequent to that, the plaintiffs filed a response. We filed a response to their response, and there will be oral arguments next week in New Orleans. So we're kind of in limbo right now. We're waiting to hear from the appellate court. We look forward to our hearing next week.
Well, thank you. Katie, having been a deputy commissioner at the department, might be able to, and no longer being in that position, may be able to talk a little bit more about the history of this type of litigation in the United States. And, it's Texas first, and what's been the history in these other states where they've been sued, and how does that go? What does this tend to look like for a state?
Well, the group that brought the suit, I mean, they were very particular in where they brought the suit. They looked for a judge that they thought would be favorable to their case. And they've gone to many, many states, and some states have settled the lawsuit and have now entered into consent decrees that last years and years and years, and also can bankrupt the state or bankrupt other systems. You know, one state in particular that settled, they pay millions of dollars in monitor fees and legal fees for the other side, and that money has to come from somewhere, and it's coming from other systems like education or juvenile justice. In Texas, though, it's not that we think everything is perfect by any means, but the Texas state agency, the legislature, our leadership in Texas have an improvement plan, and it's well underway, and we just can't be frozen anymore. Yep. By what is a federal judge going to say or do and when. So we have our own improvement plan, and we're working very hard on that.
Yeah, and so that, we had an op-ed come out recently where we basically said, look, we can't afford, the children of Texas foster care can't afford to be under federal oversight for the indefinite future. There are states that have been basically under, their CPS has been under federal control through a federal judge, unaccountable, unelected federal judge for 30 years. And just there, because you don't get out from under this particular type of federal tyranny until you make that particular judge happy. So there was a state that got out from under it whenever the judge who was overseeing their federal court order died. And so you either have to make the judge happy or you have to outlast the judge. And in the meantime, Texas loses control of its own foster care system. Voices like mine and voices like our associate partners that go to the legislature and offer suggestions, like we're going to hear, some of which were implemented this session, we wouldn't really have a voice there anymore because all of a sudden, the agency goes to making sort of its constituency, content and happy, and helping the children that are among its constituency to making one judge in Corpus Christi happy. And so that's really the problem with this philosophy.
Brandon,
yeah, absolutely.
If I could just add, the 20 roughly states that have gone on consent decrees, they do not have better outcomes for children.
That's right.
Yet they spend a lot more money because essentially you have an unelected official with no accountability for the money and really no accountability for the outcomes. So you have worse outcomes for the kids for more money, so the consent decree really makes no sense to do. It's our job as legislators and lawmakers to make it work better.
Yeah,
So.
and Texas was unique in that all of the other states rolled over and settled these lawsuits. And Texas is the only state that has fought this organization. And we have fought it at every point, and we are now fighting it on appeal. And in the meantime, our elected officials took up the gauntlet of fixing this ourselves in our own Texas way. And so I'm going to let Representative Frank really talk about what was the response from our elected officials, not from the judge, but from the people that we trust to make decisions for us.
How's that? I've told a number of people, going into this session, you knew the legislature was going to do something, and that's a blessing or a curse. I mean, the good news is the legislature is going to do something. The bad news is the legislature is going to do something. And before I start on a couple of things that we did, one of the things I would just brag on with TPPF, I think this is an area, really most of the human services area, is not something that conservatives tend to get involved in. And it's where all the money is spent. And if we're not involved, then all of the people making decisions have a different worldview than you do. And so really the timing was amazing, and it wasn't mine. I'm not taking credit for but TPPF to come to the table, because literally of the people that work in this area and have influence on legislators, they literally are alone in having a worldview that would agree with the rest of the folks in this room. So several of the things that we did, the major things that we did really was set HB 5 to set DFPS, which again is the parent organization, as a standalone governor-appointed agency. Right now, before that, it was part of a much larger HHSC organization. And really that was to get faster decision-making, to get better accountability to employees, honestly, to be able to hire and fire faster, but also to make faster decision-making. And I think that really has already been implemented, and I think by and large is been appreciated by the folks in HHS, or excuse me, at DFPS. I get confused on the initials as well. So that was one. That one's already implemented. There's still some changes going on, but that one's pretty far down the road. The other, which was HB 6, ended up being SB 11, which is community-based care. Right now, with the exception of a small area of Tarrant County, or in 7 counties around Fort Worth, the state runs all of its foster care system out of Austin. And shockingly, it doesn't work. I've used the example, it's like trying to run one independent school district, Texas independent school district, and running it out of Austin, and then being shocked that you don't have community involvement, that you don't have the kind of results that we'd like. And so the Fort Worth program is being expanded, and that's being rolled out. We are still in the implementation phase. One of the frustrating things about being a legislature, you make laws, and it may be 2 or 3 or 4 years before you find out whether the laws that you implemented that you did pass are implemented well. And that's really the phase that we're in on community-based care. It's being implemented in the San Antonio area, and then up in the Wichita Falls, Abilene area. I won't use region numbers because they don't mean anything to y'all, but anyway, so that's where that stands. There was a couple of other things that we did with kinship care to allow it to be a little bit easier for families to step in and take care of kids instead of transferring them over to foster kids. But those were the big ones.
Well, the game changer really is this shift in philosophy from foster care being something that the state of Texas provides. And I'm not talking about protecting children. That's a core government function. Protecting children is part of our police power and part of our responsibility. The government needs to show up when a child is in an emergency and get that child out of the emergency. After that, though, the agency was in the position of making decisions related to the child's care. And, I don't know about you, but things that end in the word care, I just would rather the government not do. Things like Obamacare, for example, right? Things like daycare. I don't want my kids to go to a government daycare. Things like hair care. I would not get my hair cut at a government salon. And so if it ends
That's a good philosophy. Can I steal that?
Absolutely.
If it's got care.
If it's got care in it, we don't want it to do it. And so foster care, and the agency, they do yeoman's work. And there's not anyone up here, and there's not anyone in this organization that would say anything differently. In fact, we'll talk here in just a minute about the funding increase and where the funding increase went. And believe it or not, there's a new $500 million for the agency. And people expected TPPF to throw a fit about that, and we did not, because of where that money was going and how it would be spent this time. Now, in past sessions, we would have taken issue with perhaps some of the spending. DFPS's total budget is $4.5 billion now, and it's almost doubled in the last decade. And so there have been places in the past that we think maybe that money didn't need to be spent, but this session, that money was spent wisely. And so I'll have Representative Frank talk right quick about, more money, right? And why that necessarily may not have been a bad idea this particular session.
Well, the biggest funding increase we did was with the 75% of the employees that are dealing with kids directly, and that was about $1,000 a month increase, from about $33,000 average to $45,000 average, which in most cases is still not a great salary for college-educated folks and really working in some of the hardest places. I think the reason I thought it was important was, we want to pay people well, but we also need to hold them accountable. And I think that's one of the things that, with making it a standalone agency, with paying a reasonable price, I think that we are hoping, all of us are, that the accountability comes along with it, because there's a tremendous number of great employees within CPS. But there is also a culture of, hey, let's just have the good employees take all the caseload, and we never fire the other ones. And so we are hoping that those things will come together, that we will pay good employees well for doing a very, very important job, but that we will also take care and maybe change a little bit the culture of not having the other ones around.
Right, and so the philosophical shift, so that was, I would call that a Band-Aid. I mean, the turnover was extremely high at the agency, and it was hard to keep anyone in their job long enough to see a case through, and that was causing all sorts of sort of systemic problems. And so that funding and that first of all came in terms of an emergency funding package I think it was just, it's a Band-Aid, and then the legislature really took up the other issue in the session of, how do we cure, the condition that we just put a Band-Aid on? And the cure was really a change in philosophy from government care to communities care, right? And moving this gigantic behemoth of decision-making for all of these 40,000 children throughout the state, from Austin to the communities where those children were living, and having people there making decisions. And so the idea there was the state is divided into smaller regions. In each of those regions, there's a lead nonprofit or government entity organization that will be now in charge of sort of taking care of those foster kids, making decisions, making sure they have good homes to be placed in, and then ultimately being accountable to the department and to the agency and to the legislature. And that's the role of government, right? The role of government is oversight and accountability. They're better at that than they are at care, right? And we can do that. We can make an efficient, accountable government that oversees and care. We can't make a government that cares because people have to care. And so really that's the rest of this is about what community-based foster care looks like. And so, this sounds like a great idea, and why wasn't it, was everyone in favor of this? Was it an easy lift?
No, not at all. You were. I would say this, one of the other reasons I appreciate TPPF, when you look at the people who testify before our committee on CPS issues, virtually all of them are Austin-based child care think tanks that do not provide services to kids. Okay, I'm looking forward to hearing you. Haven't had a chance to talk yet. But the number of folks that actually provide services to kids, and I realize you don't either, but you don't necessarily think everything should be based in Austin, right? But literally, to a person, the people that testified, with the exception of you, that fits their description, right?
Yeah, it
and
does.
So this is not a popular idea within the very small circle of people who have typically had influence in this arena.
Right, and it wasn't, but 18
But the
months
providers
ago, that's right.
love it.
They do.
I mean, the people that are actually working with kids, to a person, were like, yes, we want more ability to work with these kids in Wichita Falls, in San Antonio, they want more ability to work with kids. And they want the freedom and the families.
And I don't want to put words in your mouth, Kristene, but the agency seemed to have seen the successes in the pilot region in Fort Worth, and were also, appeared to be in favor of the move to this model.
Yes, that's right. We had it in our LAR. Community-based care was previously a slightly different model, and it evolved during session as discussions do when you have a pilot. We had the pilot up in Fort Worth, as Representative Frank mentioned, and we were really pleased with the outcomes. The community seemed to be coming together. Capacity for children in foster care was growing. Some innovative services were being offered, and we felt like it was worth expanding and had put that forward in our LAR, and kind of took it to the next level during session when the legislature added case management, which is something that's typically and historically been a function of the department for the providers in these localized areas to do. So we have an aggressive implementation strategy, one that we feel is doable but aggressive. It's a big shift and it's a big state, so.
How's the implementation going? I know, it may be early days, but can you let us know how, what regions are doing this, what regions are doing this next, and where we are in the rollout of this new and improved foster care system?
I can. We're currently in negotiations with our partner in the Fort Worth area. They're an entity called ACH, and they currently do kind of what we call phase one. They've taken over placement services for children and kind of that service provision for the children in foster care. We're in negotiations to move that contract forward for them to take over case management and working with children who are in relative care. We have recently put out a request for a proposal for Bexar County. That is out and will close in, I think, March 5th. We anticipate a contract award in that area in April and a go-live date in October of 2018. The that is in Representative Frank's area up in Wichita-Abilene. Bexar County, actually, we anticipate awarding a contract in June with a go-live date of December. Later this spring, we'll announce the next 2 geographical areas that we're going to go forward in, with the anticipation of awarding contracts at the end of this calendar year with a go-live date sometime towards summer, mid to late summer for both of those in 2019.
So that's how many new regions, or how many total regions going into the legislative session in 2019?
So we'll have 5 sessions kind of in some stage, going into the session.
Out of how many in the state?
So we've divided the state into 17 areas, so 5 out of 17.
Okay. Well, Katie, we heard, you sort of represent or the voice of the provider community, or at least, very, very many providers in the state, and we heard some concern from some of the advocates that the providers weren't ready for this, or that this is just really a hot potato, taking something that the state has done and then just sort of throwing it in the laps of providers. And so I guess the question is this better? Why is this better? And are your people, ready for it?
Mm-hmm. Well, I do represent providers, and I hate that word, but I can't think of a better word
I know.
to use. When I say provider, these are faith-based, mission-based, nonprofit organizations all over the state, many of whom have been serving children and families in their communities for years. In some cases, decades, and over a century in many cases. So these are beloved institutions who have grown and evolved over the years to serve their communities' children and families. They are excited. I can't say that every community is ready today, but we are excited about the opportunity. I think the question that we all need to be asking is, are communities ready?
Yep.
Because the beauty and spirit of community-based care is, it's not just about one provider, it's not just about the state agency, it's about communities coming together, identifying deficiencies and gaps in their community, responding to that, building that, and taking an ownership and investment for their own children and their families.
Yep.
And so I think there are areas of the state that are probably more ready than others, but we have 17 catchment areas. We have 1 current contract in phase 1 of 3 phases. So we have a long way to go and a lot of time to ready ourselves, but we are actively working on that.
I was at an event that you had some graphic that basically said that the implementation or passing the bill was easy, right?
Yeah, I don't think I used those words. I'm pretty sure. I said
It didn't seem easy.
Well, I said it was a picture of a guy passing out as he got to the start line,
Okay.
not the finish line.
There
So
you
it was
go.
basically saying, man, all this work was really hard, and everybody's patting themselves on the back. But the reality is, it's just at the start, because the implementation is all that matters. If it's implemented poorly, then kids are going to be hurt, and we're all going to look stupid, and we're going to be coming back in 2 years or 4 years and trying to figure out what did we mess up. The implementation of this is very hard. It's not a magic pill to go, oh, if we do it in the communities, everything's going to be sunshine. No, it's hard, but at least we will know where the problems are. Right now we have challenges, and we go, we have challenges. Well, what part of the state? Well, we're not sure, but we will know, here's the people who are responsible for this area. We will know what their performance measures are, and we can go in and fix it. And if there's a problem in one part of the state, not necessarily the whole state.
Right.
And the state agency is not out of the equation. I mean, they
Sure,
are
absolutely.
a partner moving forward.
Yeah.
The roles and responsibilities are clearly defined.
Yeah.
Accountability measures are in place and transparent, but they are an active partner as part of that community.
Oh,
And since this is a new concept to most people, it's important to remember the front end, the investigative side, stays as it is, improved, and there's plenty of things that are working on. But once you remove the child and they go into foster care, that's where community-based care. So you have to look at it like 2 sides. The front end is not touched by this. It's the back end. The foster care is what's involved here.
Yeah, I mean, the investigators are sort of the police, right? They show up in the emergency, and they are the emergency response people. And then once the decision is made by state employees to remove a child or not remove a child, if you remove the child, then from that point forward, the agency's role will shift to more of a partner with these nonprofit agencies to provide the actual care. And we're involved with a lot of our partners and with the department in crafting some of these questions, like what are their performance measures on which these nonprofits will be measured? How do we, how do we define success, right, is the question. And it's amazing to me as we've never asked the question, or at least not asked the question well enough to know if we're succeeding. And it was when the judge wrote a 350-page opinion that told us how bad it was. We know what failure looks like now, and so we need to really dig into what success looks like. Katie asked, are communities ready? And so I have Matt here from the Permian Basin, and I guess that's the question: is the Permian Basin ready? If it's not, how are we going to get the Permian Basin ready?
Yeah. As of today, no, the Permian Basin isn't ready, and it's a matter of us just building up. And excuse me, it's really exciting to see SB 11 come out. We've all read through it and see the opportunity that we can take over. Not that we can take over, but that we can take responsibility for our kids, and we can be the ones to step up. And so we've kind of just on the very ground level, base level, started to look at what can we do? How can we respond to this concern? Of course, there's capacity, there's services, and so it's just a matter of at this point identifying what it is, and then we got to start building up. But
yeah. So tell us about the attic and where the attic fits into, or would fit in your mind, in this community-based response.
Yeah. So the attic, we started off as just a community closet where we could share tangible needs or resources to foster homes. And then as we got into it, we realized, well, shoot, it's good to help foster homes, but let's see if we can actually provide something for those kiddos to prevent them from going into care. And so we further got to serve on the FBSS side. What does FBSS stand for?
Family-based safety services.
Family-based safety
We call them
services.
in-homes cases, children who are living with their parents.
Yeah. So we've had a number of FBSS cases that we've been able to help out with, either through beds or anything like that. And then more of the community come in. How can we help? What can we do? Can we make meals? And, make meals for our people. Being a foster parent is really hard, and sometimes you just need dinner. So we started distributing meals, and as we got into it, we realized people want to be involved. They want to be at the edge of the movement, if you will. And so we at the attic, my wife and I are just we look to the church, we look to the community to see how we can to see what they can do, to ask them what they can do to actually make a difference in these kiddos' lives.
So we're working with you and with some community members out in Midland to sort of figure out how to do this, right? To actually implement this and to look at a community that's not ready and figure out how we can get it ready and bring all of those different community members together. And the difference is, these are our kids. I don't live in the Permian Basin. I live in Hays County, so they'll be my kids down in Hays County. But those are Matt's kids.
Yeah.
And other people in the Permian Basin, it's their kids. And that's a different response, right? So if these are our kids and not the state's kids, there's this concept of diffusion of responsibility, right? If it's the state's responsibility, to what point does it become no one's responsibility? If it's everyone's responsibility, it's no one's responsibility. But if we're told up here it's one of our responsibilities, it's going to get done, right? That's why you have to identify who it is and who's responsible. And that's to some extent what we're doing by focusing on at the community level. And organizations like Matt's and this concept, or what we're doing is we're saying not everyone can be a foster parent. I have a lot of young children at home, and I couldn't be a foster parent, but I can bake a casserole and take it to somebody. And there's a role for everyone. And so what we've started in communities throughout Texas and in Permian Basin, which is where we're involved, is those conversations around what is everyone's role and responsibility. And I think, to me, it's just worked out. We're in the infancy out there, but what can you say about really how we're forming that?
Yeah, we're at the infancy stage. At this point, it's figuring out who can do what, figuring out who would be the leader out there, and then getting that leader so they feel like they could actually pull this off, so that they know the community has their back going into that. And then as at the attic, our role is to start building up capacity to help start building up capacity. So I'm going to start recruiting churches to engage in this. And we've got a network of about 5 or 6 churches right now that are involved. We're doing foster parent night out and adopt a caseworker through those churches. So we're getting them, the idea is to get them just a little bit involved, just to kind of see what the water's like, and then eventually push them all the way in.
Yeah, so this adopt a
To it, so.
this adopt a caseworker is a really interesting program because those caseworkers that are doing this work now, those are the angels among us. Absolutely. They really are, and some of them, many of them are. There are. I mean, honestly, there are ones. My wife worked in the school system, and she was one of the ones that did her job really well, and so she ended up with everyone's job. People who didn't do their job so well ended up without a job. I mean, they weren't fired, but they didn't do anything. They were just moved around to the bus barn. And so, we do want the good employees, we want them to be well supported, and these are the same employees that we put in the statute will move from the public system, where they're employed by the state now, into the private nonprofit system. And so, tell us about the Adopt a Caseworker program, because to me that's something that y'all are going to need even after you move into community-based care.
Absolutely. So it was actually, I think I read something that the governor and lieutenant governor put out about adopting a caseworker. I thought, this is easy. And so we recruit volunteers, and we recruit the CPS workers as well, and with the goal of, hey, you're going to meet with them once a month, send them some other encouragement throughout the time, and we also hope that that CPS worker will look to that volunteer as well as their church for support for their clients as they feel it's appropriate, similar to what Care Portal does. It's just more of a human care portal kind of thing. So. And then, carrying it. We're getting anecdotal feedback right now, and from the volunteer end, they're loving it. They're loving just to sit down and talk with these ladies, mostly women. And then we just got some feedback today as I was driving, from talking to my wife, and the caseworkers are loving just having emailing back and forth and enjoying lunch or whatever it is. So just it humanizes it. It normalizes all the process, and so we can. Just make them feel loved.
Well, and so, Katie, I want to talk about that, which is how does this look different in a community whenever an SSC takes over? And I guess the one we have now is the only really demonstrable evidence we have is Fort Worth, and so I guess you could draw on that to talk about how is it better than or different at least than the current system.
And it's not perfect, and we have a lot of room to grow. But I think the biggest difference is it's not a giant state bureaucracy. So what ACH, or their actual name is Our Community, Our Kids. So it's the agency there that owns the network and contracts directly with the state. They're able to be nimble. They're able to be creative and innovative. They have outcomes that are clear and clearly defined that they have to meet. And so far, in year 3, they're operating in year 4 right now. In year 3, they're showing success, improvement over what their baseline was in terms of keeping kids together, siblings together, getting them into lesser restrictive environments. So they're not all in institutions or in more restrictive settings. They're in foster family homes. Siblings are together. We're not 100% there yet, but we're making progress. And so I think the fact that they're not a bureaucracy as big as a giant statewide system definitely helps them be nimble and be more responsive to those immediate children's needs.
I think one of the really interesting anecdotes that I've heard out of that pilot program that's now the model for our statewide model is they had children. They once they took over the placement of children in Region 3B, they realized that they had children being removed in Palapena County, which is a rural county in their catchment area. They had kids that were being taken from homes there, but they didn't have any foster homes in that area. And so they approached Palapena County and went to the churches there and said, why don't we have foster homes? How do we get foster homes? And they basically said all of these requirements, the CPR training, a lot of the education that you have to do in order to get foster certified happens in Fort Worth, and our people can't drive in and get the training as much as you need to do it. And so Our Community, Our Kids said, well, what if we bring the training to you? And so they've started doing the training and it's just this change in mindset. I mean, I can sit here and be critical of the agency, and I have been critical of the agency for not doing something like thinking about that. But whenever you have the scale of the entire state, it's a little bit difficult to realize that there's a problem in Palapena County.
254 counties.
That's right.
254 counties.
That's right.
They don't know where Palapena County is.
When you have 7 counties or 8 counties, you can say, this is a problem and let's go fix it.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really the the secret sauce here. So I want to maybe end, unless y'all have anything you want to make sure we cover, I want to probably end with the larger question that is the title question. Anybody have anything they want to talk about before we finish?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, so the title question was, are foster children better off now than they were before the session, or they were in 2015 whenever Judge Jack entered her order, or whatever period of time you want to pick? And so I guess I'll start with Matt and just come down and say, are kids better off?
Yeah. So statewide, I don't have the data for that. We don't examine those things. But I would say in the Permian Basin, right, I would say they're better off. And a lot of it's because they're better off because we're involved, because my friends are involved, right? If you know you're gonna take your car to your buddy to fix it rather than someone else, and the fact that we have the community involved and the people that care about these kiddos involved, that's why I think we're in a better shape that we are, and I think numbers wise it's showing too. I want to say one of the CPA that the child placing agency we were with is having to hire more folks because they got more kids, they have more foster parents than ever before, and so things are looking up, I think, in the Permian Basin.
Good. Kristene?
So, yes, I think that one thing that came out of shining the light on this, and that Governor Abbott's leadership in naming this an emergency item, and the way that the House and the Senate really embraced the charge and really looked to make significant and substantial reform, has created this excitement around the state. It's shed a light on the needs of our kids and our communities, and have gotten a lot of people who have not previously been involved. Yeah. I think some of the things like adding caseworkers, paying raises for caseworkers has made a substantial difference in the turnover, in morale. A lot of things that we put in place in terms of training, and kind of some accountability things like Representative Frank was talking about, along with those raises, has really raised the delivery of what we're doing. Turnover is way down. Now, while that is not an indication that things are better for foster kids, we know that when kids change caseworkers repeatedly, some of their history, some of their needs may get lost in that transfer. So reducing turnover is huge in impacting future outcomes for our kids. So I think that's been a big deal. Caseloads are down. That means caseworkers can spend more time concentrating on the families that they're serving. We are starting to see some measures, capacities going up across the state. In large part, I hope, will continue to be driven by rate increases that the legislature gave to providers and caregivers. We see we're placing more kids with kin. Kids that are placed with kin have better outcomes than any kids that are involved in the foster care system. We're seeing a reduced time to permanency slightly. That's a long-term thing. It takes a while to impact, but we are seeing some progress there. We're seeing progress moving kids that have been in the system for 2 years or more out. So there's some initial indicators. I want to caveat that I think Hurricane Harvey may impact some performance in certain parts of the state, and we've yet to fully perhaps realize that. But I think just the general enthusiasm and interest and people putting their toe in the water will go a long way. I think community-based care, as we spread it across the state, has a potential to be a real game changer. So I'm optimistic.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think kids are better off, and I agree with what the other panelists have said. We have a clear course and a clear direction. Representative Frank and Chairman Shortner on the Senate side, the leadership of both sides, and they provided the direction that they want the state to go in, so there's no more ambiguity about that, and they funded it. And they said, get ready, it's coming, and so we are. And in the Permian Basin and other communities that aren't ready, I think we're getting ready, and that right there is positive, and capacity is growing, and providers and organizations are starting to talk, and silos are breaking down, and so I do think all of that is good, but I would just caution us from over-celebrating. At the end of the day, it's about an individual child, and that child's mom or dad, and grandparents, and if that individual case doesn't work out well for that family, then we're not, then we failed that child and that family, so. We have to look at it, I think.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because we in Austin, and I'm only been here a year, so I really don't want to put myself in this category, but do. We look at numbers, right? Before I came to this work, I represented children in foster care, and so it was that scale. Is little Johnny better off?
Did we get it right for that?
And a lot of times it wasn't, because his life kind of got worse during his stay in foster care and not better. But we look at numbers here, and we can look at numbers all day, but we don't want to lose sight, and that's why the providers who actually have the children in their home or manage the homes that the children actually live in really have the best line of sight to this question. And I don't want to be Pollyannic about this, because we will never have a perfect system, and because we are dealing with imperfect people, and these families are some of the most difficulties of any families in this state. I mean, they are extremely poor, they're extremely dysfunctional, and those children, a lot of those children, if they're not already harmed or traumatized when they come into the system, they're traumatized and sometimes necessarily so by having to take them from their parents. And so there's a lot of work that has to be done with these children, and it's hard work. And I can't sit up here and say that we're ever going to have a system that any of us will be content with. We're going to have a system that it's just going to be, we're going to have to learn to live with, I'm afraid, because honestly, these kids are never going to probably have the outcomes that we would want for them, would want for our own children.
Yeah, I would say it's early. I think there are some improvements. Clearly, there are some improvements already, but it's early.
It is.
I think so many times one of my big frustrations is we always want to talk about inputs, and you were careful to be, inputs meaning caseworker numbers are better. Really, we ought to, in my opinion, only talk in terms of child outcome. How long are children on average in the state's care? Because keeping them in there keeps them in a state of uncertainty, which is unhealthy, right? We have, I think, still, there's just a lot of areas to improve on, but they need to be improved for a long period of time, not just have, everybody's focus on it, and we have a bunch of ADD people, and I'm one of them. But this is a long haul. The changes that are made, and it's going to be, is it improved a couple of percent for next year, and then a couple of percent? It is a long, hard deal. But to me, all of the measurements need to be based on the outcomes to children needs to be what measured. Unfortunately, we respond to an article that's written, one child death out of 30,000 kids in foster care. We knee-jerk around, and we don't allow them to actually do the work, right? We criticize the investigators when they were going to be criticized whether they took the child or whether they left the child, right? I mean, seriously, our staff, we get calls. They took my child, I didn't do anything. And then 3 months later, they're in the newspaper. They did something. But the article was already written about this evil caseworker. And I'm not saying the caseworkers are perfect, but the caseworkers are put in the hardest situations that you and I never want to be in, and then everybody criticizes, including legislators. But the bottom line is we need to look at how is our organization doing, how is it doing compared to the other 10 big states, not how are we doing compared to Rhode Island, how are we doing compared to Florida, New York, California. How are we doing a good job? And in most of those cases, we're doing okay. We're doing about average right now. Who here wants to be average in Texas in foster care? No. We ought to be doing a great job, and I think it's just important that we measure based on child outcomes, not all the other stuff that people want to talk about, and not the one-off problems.
Right, we did talk about, that there was this foster care crisis, and at the beginning of the legislative session, some of that was just absolutely manufactured, because if you did look at our numbers compared to other states, we were about in the middle of the pack. But with the
and
judges,
by the way, just because a federal judge that was handpicked by a group says you're in crisis doesn't mean. I'm not arguing that there weren't some problems, but that's not a de facto proof that you're in problems. When you look at the federal measurements, we're right in the middle. Again, am I proud to be in the middle? Absolutely not. Do we need to do better? Absolutely.
Yeah, and the media is not helpful about this. I don't know if you can imagine that, but I don't know if you've ever seen a story about how good a job CPS did in this case. How competent, and compassionate their investigator was. What you hear about is the failures by CPS.
The
And-
adopt a caseworker may be the best thing I'm taking away. That is like the best idea, because most of the caseworkers, 25 to 30-year-old,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they are young. Most of them, I mean, I don't know if most of them's right, but it seems like most of them don't have kids of their own. It's a,
Wash, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, we
It's
do
a
that.
tough job, and having somebody that could come alongside them and help.
Just go get
Just
coffee.
have somebody to talk to.
Yeah.
I mean, they see the worst of humanity in some of these houses, and they just do. And just to have somebody to be able to, not till confidence is to, but just to have somebody to be able to sit down and have a cup of coffee with and act normal for a while, because they don't, their job, they don't stop and have tea and coffee 3 times a day. They are from sun up to sundown, knocking on doors and going into situations, and it's a tough job. And so we're going to have a little time right now for questions, and I would welcome you. I mean, you are looking at the people really that have the answers, not me excluded, to what's going on, but what we know about, and to each of their points, it's really early days. And I think the better question is, can we leave the foster care system alone long enough to see how this turns out and to see whether we've succeeded? Right here.
Just to clarify, does the state retain the, I guess, technical legal custody even when they're handed off to the provider?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then, so second, when we talked about the providers, all these nonprofits that are going to take over the various regions, will any state dollars go to them to help, or will it be totally nonprofit, they raise their own funds to?
Of course, the vast majority of dollars will be from the state. That now, the place it's
So
happening.
the state will now just shift dollars from CPS over to these nonprofits?
Katie probably has the best
Sure.
insight
I mean,
there.
today, the state contracts with 300 plus provider organizations, and they pay a daily rate for those beds. Essentially, it's kind of fee for service, although I hate to draw parallels to other systems, but I need a bed, I'm going to pay for a bed. In the community-based care model, it's one rate regardless of the type of bed or the level of care of the child. And that rate's calculated through a whole lot of smart people doing math. But that rate, so that rate is paid for that child, and that provider has a performance-based contract. So not a fee-for-service, but a performance-based contract, and they have to meet certain outcomes for that child, but they still only get that rate for that child. That doesn't mean that they don't still rely on some donations or philanthropy or private funding and support from other communities. That happens today, and I think that would continue to happen. We don't want to discourage that at all. So does that answer your question, or not really?
Yeah, I think so.
But keep in mind, even today, 95% of all foster care training is done by nonprofits.
Yeah,
You don't
that's
go to the
right.
state to get trained to be a foster parent. You go to one of the nonprofits that is already doing it. This just adds a new level
Yeah. I mean, I was
of
just
coordination.
thinking of the Broward County example we talked about, where it sounded to me, and maybe I'm wrong, I thought the churches were doing a lot of this work basically pro bono.
Well, and there's opportunity for everyone to contribute, but I think one of the main bulk of work that's shifting is the individual caseworkers who used to be state employees and now they're working for a lead agency, and their salaries, the funding for their salaries will shift into these nonprofit organizations.
Right.
And those organizations are, for the most part, currently the flow through for foster care dollars anyway, and that will continue. And so that's how the funding will come down. It's not going to be enough. I mean, there's room for churches, and there's room for everyone. There's room for people who bake casseroles. There's room for people to babysit on the weekends. There's room for churches and everything else. Yeah, go ahead.
And just to add to, I'm probably talking out of turn because I'm a policy guy. However, I do know that I recall reading that there's also penalties whenever you don't meet certain outcomes. So a kiddo goes too far away from home, or they're outside of the catchment area. That SSCC, that group, it gets penalized for it too. So they have to. That forces that nonprofit to start building up their own capacity, so they don't have to pay the penalty.
That's part of their performance measures, right? We're saying we want children We're saying we want children to be within 50 miles of the home where they were removed from. We're saying we want siblings placed together. We're saying that we want them to be able to go to their court hearings and see their parents and make all their appointments. And so there's all these metrics that the lead agency, the lead nonprofit or government entity is being judged on. And they could actually get a bonus for doing it really, really well, or they can see, get into a review process or even be disincentivized if they do it really, really poorly, and we can go find a new one, right? We can go find a new nonprofit to take care of our kids in whatever county or region we're talking about. Was there a question over here? Yeah, right there.
I just wanted to ask if CASA fit into this model, and is there something, given the fact that this model is shifting a little bit, is there anything that CASA can do better?
Gosh, who's going to take that one?
CASA is in the model, at least in the places they operate. They're not in all 254 counties, but yeah, CASA, I guess they may have to change a little bit, but I think their role will be very similar. They'll still be representing the child in court, just as they have in the past, and I'm sure there's things they can do better, but I know they are very well thought of in the vast majority of places they operate.
Yeah, so
The vast majority.
So every child in foster care gets at least one, most of the time 2 representatives. One is their attorney, and that lawyer is supposed to do exactly what the child asks for, and that's the role I played. And so whenever I went and talked to my kid and they said, I want a pony, I was supposed to go to the judge and say, Judge, my client wants a pony. But really, oftentimes, my kids wanted to go home. Whether it's good for them or not, they wanted to go home. And my job as their lawyer was to get them home, believe it or not. And the other role, the other advocate for children is the guardian ad litem, and a lot of times, that's a CASA volunteer, court-appointed special advocate, and their job is to advocate for the child's best interest. So a lot of times, I was at loggerheads with a CASA volunteer, and rightly so, because we had different focuses, right? It wasn't in the child's best interest to go home, but my job as a lawyer was to say, my client wants to go home today. And so those are the 2 roles, and those roles will continue exactly the same. I think the only thing that will change related to the legal part of that, and so that's once we get into the courtroom, the only thing that's going to change is rather than the attorney that represents the state calling a state caseworker to testify about the family and the child and to make recommendations, they're going to call a nonprofit employee, probably a former state employee, to give the exact same testimony. Right here, Carissa.
You have a kid that you get 8, 10 years old, and you keep them all the way up through 18 years old.
That's right.
To be ready for college or go to work. What happens?
Christine?
So if a child stays in care and ages out, there's a number of benefits that are available to them in terms of college tuition, even financial assistance for housing, financial assistance for technical school or some kind of trade college. Usually if a child ages out, and about around 1,100 children age out of foster care every year here in Texas. If a child ages out, we've been doing a lot of work from the time they were, say, 15, 16, to talk about what's going to happen when you age out of care. And so there are a lot of benefits for our kids. And the most important thing is to really make sure that they can take advantage of those benefits.
So you have to go through the attorney to get all this worked out, is that right?
No, you don't have to go through an attorney. These children, we have specialized caseworkers who work with children who are aging out. They're called preparation for adult living caseworkers. So these are people who are really expert in navigating those benefits, navigating the services that are available to our youth, and making sure that they know what choices lay ahead of them. So none of those require a lawyer to take advantage of. It really just requires the youth understanding what the opportunities are and getting a lot of support to follow all the steps.
But we also need to push to make that very much the exception. Somebody should never be in the foster care system for 10 years.
Yeah.
Right.
The idea is to get, the idea is to get to permanency, right? So the kid is in there for an average of 20 months before they're out. But really the foster care system should be a short term. Should be short term. You're in and you're back with your parent, or you're off to a permanent adult that is taking, if this adult is not taking care of you, this adult is, and then the state backs out. That's the way it's supposed to be. I mean, in some cases that doesn't happen. You were talking about, you can age out. But the job of the foster care system should be a temporary job.
We need to make that clear.
Yeah. Well, it should be, right? And that's one of the metrics that the federal government, who does send some funding down here for this, quite a bit of funding, they judge the states on those metrics, and one of those metrics is how long do children stay in care, what's your permanency rate, and the philosophy really is we're moving toward permanency. We want to reunify with their parents, and so they're given a rehabilitation plan to fix whatever was broken. And a lot of times that has something to do with neglect and not abuse. And so these are parents who were neglectful, not abusive, and so we're figuring out whatever it was. Was it a drug problem? Was it just a housekeeping problem? Was it a parenting deficit problem? And we give them the plan, and they're supposed to go work it, and if they do, then they have an opportunity to get their kids back. If they don't, which a lot of them, they just don't do, then we need to be moving that child. We need to terminate those rights, and we need to move that child to a relative. We need to move that child to adoption, and that needs to happen relatively quickly because this whole instability, just that sense of instability, of not knowing what the future is, of having your, being in the foster care system, and we have a lot of turnover, and so a foster family may decide to close their home, and that makes the foster kid be removed and put in a new home. And so I think at one point we were up to like an average of 5 placements per child in foster kid, and that was,
Yeah, it's at 3 now.
yeah, because it's 3 now, so I knew we were getting better there, and so we're down to 3 placements, and we move a
That's
child.
3 different placements in 20 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On 20 months on average, right? So it could be more, it could be less, but
Yeah.
that's
So you're just shuffling this kid
right.
around.
And that's where I think the issue on trying to get permanency, either with the parents or out, the more we can shorten that time and the more we can have less changes, the better it is for the kids, really.
And these questions right here from common sense people that are like, this doesn't make any sense. That's why I love this work, because I can talk to the people who know this all day long, and we come up with the same answers, and we all agree with each other. But when you have to explain it to someone, to people who, to me, it's just common sense. That's right, and it should be simpler, and it should be easier, and it should be better. Carissa?
Oh, thank you so much, and thank you all for coming, because I think a lot of people have a burden for something like this. So I have 2 questions. One is, in the same way you have these not-for-profits that, you work with for the beds, when you were saying, you pay so much per bed for the child. My first question is there any kind of structure in place that tries to rehabilitate the home, or any not-for-profit, you know what I mean, umbrella places that try to rehabilitate the home? And my second question, which is sort of related to it, sort of not, is I work with kids, and it's kind of a specialty, but I very often hear from empty nesters. And, in Houston, with Harvey, we really saw that when people know a need, they show up and they deliver. So I'd really like to know, because a lot of empty nesters and ladies say to me, oh, I like to work with kids. I like to do what you do. Well, I have a specific training, so I can't necessarily just say, well, come do what I do. But I was wondering, these organizations, how do we find out the one in our county? And do they need volunteers? And might this be a place I could send these people that want to, quote, work with kids, or does it not work like that?
Kristene, you could probably talk about the rehabilitation part, the service planning, and then Matt and Katie could probably talk about the, how to get involved.
So when a child is removed from their parents' care, the first thing we do right away in the first 20 days is identify a plan that would allow a path forward to, most of the time, reunify a parent with a child with a parent. In the vast majority of cases, that is the primary goal. And so we sit down with the parent, identify what the issues with their family are, and outline the services that are needed, talk about the behaviors that we hope that will result from those services, and so really lay a map for what needs to happen. We go into court. The court makes court orders that may or may not match exactly with the service plan, but the goal being what's needed to allow this child to safely return home. So, and then from there we, proceed. Usually most of those services are provided either by people that we contract with or by community organizations.
Yeah, what about how do we get involved? Where do we get involved, and how do we engage people in this work?
Yeah. So essentially, it's getting out, and you can contact CPS or contact CASA, and they can get you connected with folks. But then beyond that, and what we do is we're going out to the churches, and so the churches can know what they can do. If I can get a group of people doing what they're good at, but orienting their work towards the local orphan, then we're looking at, that's a win. And then that puts them on the edge of this movement.
Yeah, and so
Between the churches and the not-for-profit that contracts with bids.
We connect, yeah, something like that. Yeah, so we'll connect. We'll be the bridge between the community and the churches, and then also CPS and our child placing agencies, just as another layer of support, another layer of help that comes through. So we do training as well. A number of my friends and a number of us have carried hours over the following year. We don't worry about training hours because we do them all the time.
So should they contact the child placement agencies?
Yeah, child placing agencies would be a great place to go. I think CPS might not have, they probably have their own protocol, what they go through. But there's anywhere, CPS, child placing agencies, from Houston, is that right? Then Pathways, Arrows out there, so you can.
yeah, there's space for everyone, and part of the initiatives for reaching out to faith communities was Lieutenant Governor Patrick's initiative this last session to engaging faith communities, and as a result of that, the department has a faith-based office now, and they also have a community engagement person in every region that's going to be sort of working with Matt and us in the Permian Basin to get the communities ready for rollout. And so, it's either, if you call anybody, you're going to get hooked up, you'll get put to work. Don't be afraid of that. So CASA, CPS,
Local churches,
local
there's a number. I
churches.
mean, we have a large partnership, about 900 to 1,000 churches across the state who partner with us in some way in our communities to serve children and families.
All right, that is going to be it for today. I'm sure these guys will wait around for just a minute if there are any questions we didn't get to. I would like to have an opportunity to thank them. We're just a scrappy nonprofit think tank, and we don't pay our panelists, and so they're here of their own free accord because.
You were told we'd get a casserole for you.
Oh, are you serious? I'm baking casseroles for all of you. We'll pay for parking. All right. And so I think a round of applause is definitely in order.